Good afternoon. I'm Bill Hunt, Director of the Department of Land Use and Growth Management. I'm joined by Brandy Glenn, Planner 4, and Deputy Attorney Neil Murphy. Today we're to hear a request from SMECO for a variance from forest conservation priority retention areas, which in the zoning ordinance is section 24.10. When we start, this starts the hearing. When we get underway, whoever's going to answer certain questions that I have from SMECO or make your initial presentation, if you'd identify yourself first and then go ahead, that way we'll know who's talking, which would be a help for anybody who's listening at home. So let me start off by asking, does SMECO want to make a brief presentation, or should we just go right into the substance of your application?
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Hugh Lowell from SMECO. I would say we are ready to just go ahead and move into the application and to go from there.
Okay, who will be making your presentation?
There would be primarily from SMECO, would be two people. It would be Carl Dyson, who is the SMECO forester, and me, Hugh Lowell from SMECO, to answer any questions.
All right. So one of you just go ahead and start with the description of your project. Generally, we do have the site plan. We do have all the information that you've provided, and then go briefly into the trees that you want to take down. Then I'll follow up with some questions about some things that you have in your application, plus probably ask some questions to get more detail about the trees that are coming down themselves.
Okay. Like I said, this is Hugh Lowell from SMECO, and I'll give you an overall brief description and why we need to have why we're proposing to build a substation in the Chaptico area. What we have proposed at the site is an electrical substation, and what a substation does is it effectively takes the electricity and steps it down from a higher voltage to a lower voltage, so it then can be, and then in turn be distributed through our distribution lines, which are the lines you typically see on the side of the road, in order to provide electricity and service to our customers. That is a very high-level view of what a substation does, and the reason why we are proposing the site of this area is SMECO's planning department. They're continuously, modeling the system, and trying to identify areas where there are areas of increasing load that SMECO needs to serve our customers, and also areas in which we need to offer improvements to help maintain reliable service to our customers as well. The Chaptico area, this area was specifically identified as an area where the existing substations in place were starting or at or reaching their maximum capacity, and we needed an additional station or source to help serve and address the growing load in the area. And also by the substation there, it would help because of the increasing load and the location of how far away some of the stations are that are used in a contingency situation, which means to restore power during an outage. Putting a substation at the Chaptico area, it allows us to restore power more quickly, to the customers should an outage occur.
Okay, thank you. Now, if we can go into the perhaps an overview of the site plan. I don't know if you can share it or not.
I can try to do that. Hopefully it works. Oops. The forest conservation plan?
Right, that's the view that we need.
This is the view you need?
Yeah.
Okay.
So if someone could go ahead and just relate the site plan that's being shown there and the trees that have to be removed, just a brief discussion, and then I'll get into asking some specific questions about the trees that have to be removed.
Mr. Hunt, on the screen that I see right now, it's showing page 2 of 2 of the Forest Conservation Plan. Is there a way you can bring up page 1, which is the overall view?
Yeah, page 1 of 2. Maybe they can't see this plan? All right, let me stop sharing and share again, sorry. That plan?
There you go. That's yes. That's the overall view of the site plan. Mr. Hunt, is there any specific questions you have in regards to the site plan, or would you just like me to give you a general overview of the location and what we have proposed there?
General overview, and then I'll have one question about the gravel area and how that relates to the whether or not the trees can be saved.
Okay. All right. This is what you're seeing here. This is the typical layout of a new SMECO substation when it's going to be built. What you're seeing here is the ultimate build out, where we will have two power transformers on site, and as up to as many as 8 individual distribution feeders that will come out of site to feed the area. It's located right there off Route 238 on Chapteco Road. This is actually on property that was already owned by SMECO, and also one of the other reasons why we really like this site, not only because we owned it, but it was beneficial because it's right next to our existing transmission right away. So what that means is, in order to get the lines to the station to energize it, we wouldn't have to. The need for SMECO to acquire new right-of-way or a new clearing would not be needed. So on the looking at the screen, the left-hand site, which is part of the site closest to our right-of-way, that is where the high voltage lines come into the site. And they're stepped down. They come into the transformers, which step the voltage down to the level to serve our customers. And then that's where you see then we have the bus work for the feeders, and then they all come out the station underground to feed on Route 238. And what we're proposing, and it's also to avoid the reason why you see us proposing a new entrance farther up on 238 instead of coming off of the existing right-of-way, is because there would have been wetland impacts due to the little pockets there to expand the existing entrance. So in order to avoid any impacts to wetlands is why we chose to add a new entrance to the site. And overall, the site, approximately a 7-acre site total, I think, altogether. When it's said, I think we're looking at approximately about 3.5 acres total of the site when it's all said and done.
Thank you. And inside your area where you're going to be building, there's where 4 of your trees, if I'm looking at that right.
Yes, 4 of the 5 specimen trees located on the site are inside the fenced area.
And the floor of that disturbed area says that it's a gravel area. So my question is, on those trees, or any of those trees, is it possible to avoid them and to respect what you have on, not numbered, but one of the pages in your submittal describes the critical root zone that is written in Maryland's Department of Natural Resources. that gives a formula for determining what that critical root zone is in relation to the diameter of a tree. Is there some reason why the CRZ of some of those trees couldn't be left undisturbed, given that you're covering the ground with gravel and not with concrete or asphalt or something along those lines?
The reason why we weren't able to avoid the specimen trees within inside the fence is because when designing our substations, there are several codes that SMECO has to follow in regards to phase spacing between the energized buswork. And those codes we have to follow are the Occupational Safe and Healthy Administration, or OSHA, and the National Electric Safety Code, which is the NESC. So the way you see the station laid out is all that space, that is the minimum phase spacing that SMECO is required to install for the energized parts inside the station not only to safely operate the station, but also when necessary for SMECO qualified personnel to be able to work on the equipment when needed. So we have to factor in the phase spacing of the energized parts when we were doing our substation design and layout. Then we also have to account for the turn radiuses of different vehicles that have to get into the station as well. Not only do we have to account for the SMECO line and bucket trucks that you typically see on the road, but the most important part of the substation, which is what we call it, the medium or higher voltage power transformers. Those are particularly large pieces of equipment and have weights over 100,000 pounds. So we have to be able to account for the turn radiuses of the track, because they come on specified tractor trailers that can be upwards of 100 to 120 feet in length. So we also have to make sure there's enough turn radius for the tractor trailers to get in there to get our transformer set, and to be able to have a heavy duty crane on site to move and set the transformers as well. So not only, and that is in regards to the physical aspects of the substation, which you can see above the ground. Also, what inside for every single substation that SMECO has, where you see the fence and the gravel area, there is also, in order to provide proper protection to SMECO equipment and to SMECO personnel that are standing inside and outside of the station, there is a very extensive ground grid that is required to be installed to meet safety code, a minimum of 2 feet below grade. So where you see the gravel area, there's a bunch of copper wire that has to be dug in and put below grade as well, which cannot be installed by avoiding your CRZ.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Then let's just turn to the specimen tree inventory, you call it, which is actually a figure on the plan that we're looking at right now. On the right,
that's correct, sir.
On the right-hand side, where you have tree number 1, we don't need to discuss because it's not going to be removed. Then there's tree number 2, which in that chart says, under removed column, it says no. But I believe that tree number 2 you are planning to remove. Is that right?
That is correct. That's a typo. That should say yes. Two, that should say no. Instead of a no, that should say a yes.
All right.
That's why the underneath says 2 through 5 are to be removed.
Right, that's what I thought. Just wanted to clarify that. So if you could, you do have color photographs in your application, which I'm looking at, and you do have reasons for why the trees have to be removed. But if we could just quickly run through that. For tree number 2, you say that it's in good condition, and then you have some various reasons why it needs to be removed. If you could have your forester just briefly go through and reiterate the condition of the tree. You've already explained why the trees within the fenced area have to be removed, but if you just go over briefly the condition of the tree, just to be sure that I understand what I'm looking at here. Thank you.
Hugh, I assume you want to take it. Mr. Hunt, my name is Carl Dyson. I work for SMECO. I'm also a licensed forester. I'm the one who prepared the FSD and identified the specimen trees. Trees tree number 2 and tree number 3 are very similar. I don't know if you want me to talk about them individually or together. Both are a little bit older than the rest of the surrounding trees. They're full canopy, which means when they originally grew, there was nothing else around them. So they probably go back to when the site was more agriculture. Considering their age and size, they're in decent shape for that. Tree number 3 versus tree number 2 had a little bit of an old barbed wire fence in it. But generally, considering their age, aren't in horrible shape. They do have some tip dieback and some other issues. Showed some signs of possibly being struck by lightning in the past, but all in all, relatively decent condition. Tree number 4 is a similar age tree, but is the only tree on the site that is in bad health, or what we would call declining health. Also probably from a lightning strike. It shows a lot of signs of rot and decay, irregardless of what happens on that site in the future. Tree number 4 is only going to be with us so much longer. Tree number 5, specimen tree number 5, is a little bit younger than the others. All 5 trees got the specimen, met the requirements to be specimen trees because they're over 30 inches in diameter. Tree number 5 achieved that mostly because of an emerging double trunk. Measuring it above or below the 4.5 foot line would take it out of the specimen tree qualification, but we'd rather err on the side of caution and include it. But specimen tree 5 is probably in the best shape of all of them, and is a little younger tree. So all 4 of the ones to be removed are all white oaks. Not anything particularly exciting about them.
Thank you for that. Then I think the last thing we need to do is to move to the standards that are required to grant a variance, which you've addressed in your application as well. The ones that are germane to what we're talking about today with the administrative variance for specimen trees is that a variance from forest conservation priority retention area requirements shall only be granted by the planning director upon findings that A, owing to special features of a site or other circumstances, implementation of the provisions of Chapter 75 would result in unwarranted hardship to the applicant. Could you explain the hardship that you're facing on that?
Okay. Good afternoon, Mr. Wright. This is Hugh Vole with SMECO, Southern Maryland Electric Cooperative. The hardships that SMECO would face, as you could see from the site layout, the locations of the trees, 3 of them would actually be physically in through SMECO energized bus. If they remain, we would not be able to build a station or energize it and to be able to serve load or electricity to to the local constituents. And then the specimen tree number 5 was inside the fence. The gravel, it's in direct conflict with the ground grid, and we would not be able to install the ground grid, which is there to provide the safety of not just of any type of personnel in or by the station itself.
And B, the granting of the variance will not adversely affect water quality?
That is correct. As you can see, as part of the permitting process, we are actually installing a site-specific stormwater management plan that is going to be approved by the county, which will, once complete, any wastewater will be captured and filtered on site before discharge. So there will be, and that is I would say part 1. Then also part 2 is during construction while the stormwater management is being installed. in order to make sure that we're taking care of the site and being cognizant of any potential effect on the surroundings, we're going above and beyond with the required sediment controls on the site. Not only it will not just be silt fence around the entire perimeter. We're going to be installing super silt fence everywhere to also include a filter. The filter log at the base of the fence as well to help catch and filter any water during rain events. We're going to have enhanced controls on site, and not only that, we'll also have a lot of highly visible signage that SMECA is going to install during construction as well to make sure that while the site's being built, all the controls are being maintained properly to prevent any discharge and or any adverse effects on water quality.
Then the last thing that I have to ask you concerns when you were designing this and you ended up with the final plan, was there any way that the plan could reasonably be altered? Now, you've already gone through several things that I think are germane to this particular standard that you've already mentioned, including that, number one, you own the property, which is important in and of itself, but not necessarily justification. However, the property that you own and where you're building the substation, you've stated is close to the existing lines, which is important for how you have to serve your customers. And you also said something about the entrance had to be modified or relocated to avoid wetlands, which all of these things indicate that you're pretty constrained with where you could put your construction for your substation. But is there anything else that you care to mention or can mention that relates to how the site was designed that would explain how you may have considered alternatives, but in the end you came down with this plan and it can't reasonably be altered?
In addition to the reasons that you previously stated, we can also say we did the best we can to minimize as much impacts on the site using the footprint we had, because we actually went through great several iterations to minimize the site as possible, because we also, not only were there some wetland areas over there by the existing entrance off the by our right-of-way, but there was also wetland areas around the site as well that we wanted to make sure that with this design we're able to avoid any any temporary or permanent wetland impacts with this site.
Okay, does anybody from SMECA have anything else to add? Well, hearing none, we don't need to drag this out any longer than necessary. I believe that you've met your responsibilities for proving that this variance to remove these trees is warranted based on what you submitted in your application and what you testified to this afternoon. So I'll grant your variance, and we'll prepare a letter that we'll send to you and to the state explaining the procedure that's taken place today and detailing how you've met the requirements both of our ordinance and what the state requires. I want to thank you for the completeness of your application and for your flexibility in meeting with us today through Zoom. And I don't have anything else if you don't.
No, I'm good, sir, and I would like to thank you for your time and allowing SMECA to appear before you today as well.
Okay, well, meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, everybody.
Thank you, guys.